What's up, everyone? Welcome back. It's Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know, and much to my surprise, many of you wanted me to take a deeper dive into the complaint filed by Halyna Hutchins' family against Alec Baldwin and a ton of other defendants. So, as I always say, we want to provide the content that you are interested in. Therefore, I did a deep dive into that complaint. I actually did it during a live this week. But in case a lot of you weren't able to make it to that live, I wanted to clip out my deep dive into the complaint, make it its own separate video so that you can just get here for that content if you don't care about the other cases we talked through in the case-by-case episode this week. So this episode is a one-off just of the complaint filed against Alec Baldwin and all the defendants by Halyna Hutchins. I go through the allegations, I go through the facts, I go through what they're asking for, I go through the causes of action so we can talk together about what's in this complaint and why certain things made it into this complaint that's different than a lot of the other complaints in this case. So if you enjoy this content, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell so you get the reminders, but let's jump into the complaint now. All right, so we know it's for wrongful death. Jurisdiction and venue, we don't need to go through. All the parties is kind of interesting. All these different companies that he sued, most of them have to do with production or controlling it. But what I found more interesting is something that we do in cases under the factual allegation here on page 10. The basic rules for safe gun handling include. Now, you don't have to do this in a complaint. This is not something that is necessary. But if you know the public's going to be reading it and people are going to be talking about it, you can put in here a lot of explanation about how bad this really is and how easy it could have been for them to do the right thing. Always treat the gun as if it were loaded. Never point the gun at anything the operator of the gun, in this case, defendant Baldwin, doesn't intend to destroy. Actually, let me scroll up because there was one other interesting thing. Where is it? Okay, here it is. Complaint for wrongful death. On October 1st, defendant Alec Baldwin. Some people were saying, I don't know if he's the lead defendant. Oh, he is. Defendant Alec Baldwin recklessly shot and killed Halyna Hutchins on the set of the movie Rust. Defendant Baldwin and the other defendants, none of whom are mentioned by name specifically, in this case, failed to perform industry standard safety checks and follow basic gun safety rules while using real guns to produce the movie Rust with fatal consequences. Halyna Hutchins deserved to live, and the defendants had the power to prevent her death if they had only held sacrosanct, which I think means like important, their duty to protect the safety of every individual on a set where firearms were present instead of cutting corners on safety procedures where human lives were at stake, rushing to stay on schedule and ignoring numerous complaints of safety violations. That is kind of the summary, the overall summary. All right, so let me get back to all the gun safety laws rules that they violated. Always keep the gun unloaded. Never place your finger on the trigger. Be sure of the person's target. Learn the mechanical and handling characteristics. Load the gun in front of the actors. Personally perform and observe a visual inspection. All of these rules were there, and they had a gun safety expert, but they didn't use them. The Rust production involved extensive use of firearms and required an experienced firearms expert with the skill and qualifications to maintain constant vigilance for safety matters. And then, to none of our surprise that watch this channel and have discussed this case, defendant Gutierrez Reed was inexperienced in weapons mastery with only one movie production under her belt, unqualified for the degree of skill required on the Rust set. We knew this was coming. The most basic firearm safety rule in the movie industry is that there must never be live ammunition. Again, something that we all at least should know, and everybody on a movie set should know. What's interesting about this case is they're just going to take basics and make it simple, like throwing popcorn. You've got to know, don't point a loaded gun at somebody, even if you think it's blanks. Look at the gun yourself. only load it in front of people. And if you have an armorer on the set, they need to be on the set anytime the gun is going to be there, loaded or not. And she wasn't. Defendant Baldwin was on set. Defendant Baldwin was the film's executive producer, lead actor, and contributing writer. Again, they're putting a lot of this on Baldwin. The time of the shooting, Baldwin, Miss Hutchins, and other crew members were doing a lineup of a shootout scene in an old abandoned church. The sole purpose of a lineup was to confirm positioning, frame and focus of the camera for close-up shot of the defendant Baldwin's hand and the revolver he was holding. But Baldwin's possession of a real revolver, let alone a revolver loaded with any ammunition at all, was unnecessary. He didn't even need the revolver. I think we're going to hear Halyna Hutchins told him to bring the gun. I think we're going to hear that from Baldwin. But still, you can tell also as you read this complaint, which we have had, we've discussed with our experts beforehand what needs to be in here, what's appropriate, what the standards are, so we could explain in the complaint properly what the standards are, not just what we think, what we believe, what research we've done, but what they're actually going to testify to. So in reading this complaint, I am pretty positive they already have experts hired and they've already discussed this case with experts, multiple experts, not just gun experts. All right, more facts of exactly what happened, which, we already know. Now, titles. I like titles. I like bold and underline. It tells us that they want us to focus on this. Defendant's aggressive cost cutting endangered the Rust cast and crew. Okay, this is really important. And we have a lot of claims like this, and it's true that the specific negligence by Baldwin or by Gutierrez Reed or by Halls or by anybody specifically, that's one thing. But when the overarching theme and the umbrella corporation or the top company, and from the top down, when they create an environment that makes it impossible to do things the right way, that's where the negligence begins. And that negligence has a trickle-down effect. If you're too cheap to hire a lifeguard at a pool, yes, it's the company's fault. It's the manager's fault who didn't hire a lifeguard, but it's the actual parent company who won't allow them the money and the budget to hire a lifeguard. Just like here, they did not allow them the money to have the proper safety precautions. Like we had a case where they hired teenagers that wore lifeguard shirts for minimum wage instead of paying $15 an hour for a lifeguard. That was not okay. That was putting profits over people. So here, they talk about the cost cutting, which created a negligent environment and therefore was a but-for cause of the death of Halyna Hutchins. Rust production companies were low-budget film production companies in the business of making films and were responsible for soliciting talent for the Rust production and hiring the crew to produce the film. The Rust production companies utilized aggressive cost-cutting practices during the Rust production that jeopardized and endangered the safety of the cast and crew of Rust. They hired Miss Hutchins. They began shooting aggressive cost-cutting on 2 separate occasions. Miss Hutchins' guns at the Rust had been discharged. And now we have some cutouts of text messages that, again, we've already seen. We've now had 3 accidental discharges. This is super unsafe, and RAP should be fined like 30 to 45. Accidental discharges on the firearms, awesome. Sounds good. I don't think that response was saying awesome to the discharges. I think that was probably in response to the RAP, and 30 to 45 should be good. Mr. Looper, who we know is the camera guy. And he's got a lot of complaints about their living quarters, how much they're being paid, blah, blah, blah. But the important one we're going to hear over and over again is there were massive safety issues. 2 accidental discharges, 1 accidental SFX explosive that has gone off around the crew between takes. I personally suffer from pretty bad tinnitus, which is the ear problems that you have with loud noises. And the SFX explosive sent my ears ringing until I got home. Maybe he's going to have a claim. To be clear, there are no safety meetings these days. There have been no explanations as to what to expect for these shots. When everyone from production is asked, we are usually met with the same answers about not having enough time to complete the day if we rehearse, or that is, this is a 21-day shoot. Not great. Now we have more facts about the day of the killing. And again, they use the word killing here on purpose. And this is interesting, the way they set up the counts, okay? Count 1, negligent, intentional, willful, or reckless misconduct resulting in wrongful death against all defendants. There are different ways to write complaints. Usually we'll do a count per defendant just to make it clear. And if we want to file a proposal for settlement, meaning we are making an offer to just one defendant to just settle one count, we can say this is just as to count 1 because proposal for settlement, this is again in the weeds, you probably don't care, but proposal for settlements, especially in Florida, are held to a strict standard and they have to be strictly construed and strictly complied with the rules. So we'll say this $100,000 offer is just to Alec Baldwin and just for count 1. They decided to group all the defendants in one count, which again is fine. It's not procedurally wrong, just not really the way that we do it. The producers and the Rust production companies, each of them individually and collectively, once they made the decision to use real guns on the set, had a duty to. Now, if I'm representing one of the defendants, I am telling them that they need to be more specific as to what they're saying I did. I don't think this is a definite enough statement. I potentially could say I didn't even have anything to do with half of this stuff, but they're suing my company for these bad acts. We were in charge of ammunition. We weren't in charge of gun safety, or we were in charge of gun safety. We weren't in charge of ammunition. So I think sometimes, you do have to be a little bit more specific to the defendant. But let's talk about what they had a duty to do. Negligence, duty, breach, causation, damages. So you start with duty. Provide a reasonably safe production set environment. Well, they breached that duty. Hire, train, supervise, and oversee crew who were qualified to ensure the safe procurement, storage, maintenance, transportation, transfers from person to person, and operation of deadly weapons, including the revolver that killed Miss Hutchins, as well as ammunition on the production set. And again, they know what Alec Baldwin has already said. They know what is in Gutierrez Reed's complaint. They know what's in the other complaints. They have so much information at this point from the parties involved. C, design, establish, adopt, implement, monitor, and oversee reasonable safety protocols to protect the safety of all cast and crew on site, including Miss Hutchins. This could be right out of one of our complaints. So many places just have no safety protocols at all. And we depose a corporate representative and they say, I don't know what you mean by safety protocols. We don't have safety protocols. You would be astonished at the places you shop, the places that you enjoy, theme parks that just don't have any safety protocols in place. And it's really sad. And the only way that we can hold them accountable is when something goes wrong and somebody gets hurt. And then they implement more. Just like how we got the seatbelt implemented, which, people hate lawyers. I get it, but some good comes from us too. Design, establish, adopt, implement, monitor, and oversee reasonable safety protocols, again, for the procurement of the gun. Train all those handling firearms and basic gun safety rules and the operation of the revolver fired in this case, including how to check and see if it was empty or loaded only with blanks. And that's important, okay? Because one of the excuses is going to be, oh, we didn't know. How could we know? It all looks the same. Well, they're saying, you know what? Somebody somewhere, one of these companies failed to train you properly because you should have been trained on how to know if these were blanks or live ammunition. So it just encompasses everything, which is true. You shouldn't be handling this gun if you don't know how to look and see if it's loaded or not with live ammunition. Come on. Ensure the guns were not loaded, but completely empty during lineups for shots. Ensure there was no live ammunition on set or placed in any of the guns used during the production. Conduct multiple inspections of every gun handed to an operator or actor to ensure gun was empty. If needed for a shot, only contain blank rounds and no ammunition. Inspect. And this all seems normal. I mean, there are certain things that are strict liability because they're dangerous instrumentalities like TNT, dynamite, fireworks, and guns. We know that these are dangerous, and that's why you need all this safety. Ensure the armorer was in exclusive possession of all weapons and ammunition at all times. That sounds familiar from Gutierrez Reed's complaint. Prevent live ammunition from infiltrating the production set. We've heard that a couple times. Reasonably respond to complaints, concerns, and reports of cast and crew on the Rust production regarding weapon safety and take all action necessary to resolve such complaints, concerns, and reports, including shutting down or suspending the production, delaying the production, inspecting all weapons and ammunition on set, and auditing records to ensure all personnel were adequately trained in weapons handling and safety. And investigate all unexpected near misses or discharges of guns or explosives on set to determine the root cause and prevent any other weapons safety breaches, which I'm guessing they did none of. Now, defendant Baldwin pulled out on his lonesome, mentioned by name again. He had a duty to learn the gun safety rules before picking up a firearm on set. He would tell you he knows them. Learn how to safely operate and self-check the specific revolver in the case to make sure it was not loaded or was loaded with blank rounds. He would say he does know how to do that, but that's not common practice, and that's not his mode of operation in these cases. He's the actor when they call cold gun. That's their job, so he responds or relies on them. Always treat the gun as if it were loaded. Well, he definitely didn't do that. Never point the gun at any person. Didn't do that. Be aware of the people present in the direction in which he's pointing the gun and beyond. Keep his finger away from the trigger or not operate the revolver hammer until he decided to shoot. So they've combined this. And why do you think they did? He obviously said he didn't pull the trigger. He's going to say he kept his finger away from the trigger. But they're saying, listen, in the press conference, we heard the lawyer say you have to pull the trigger in order for the gun to go off. And that's what their experts are going to say. But just in case the jury believes that you can discharge the weapon without pulling the trigger and just by pulling the hammer, he's going to say you still shouldn't have pulled the hammer until you decided to shoot. That still was negligent. Even your argument and what you did was negligent. Ensure the persons hired as armorers were experts in the firearm safety. I guess because he's a producer, I don't think every actor can necessarily control that, and they don't make the decisions on who gets hired as the armorer, but okay. Conduct or observe a visual inspection of any weapon before taking possession of the weapon. Never aim a deadly weapon at cast and crew. Ensure any cast and crew are protected against any potential discharges. Avoid recklessly discharging any deadly weapon, obviously. Each of the defendants, Gutierrez Reed, Seth Kennedy, had a duty to exercise reasonable care in the procurement, inventory, storage, inspection, etc. Defendant Halls had a duty to provide a reasonably safe production set environment. Refrain from delivering deadly weapons on the production to actors' usage without the necessary background training or experience to do so. And again, we're getting a lot of this from everywhere, where we have seen this in Gutierrez's complaint and other complaints. Alec Baldwin's interview, again, this is coming straight from that. We know Halls was transferring the gun and he shouldn't have been. Inspect any weapon. Accurately report the scope, nature, extent of the visual inspection. Investigate and reasonably respond to complaints. Because again, he's an assistant producer, I think, or assistant director. So he's a higher up. So he is one of the people that needs to investigate this stuff. The producers and the Rust production companies negligently did the following acts. Chose to hire the cheapest crew available rather than hiring, training, and supervising crew who are qualified to ensure the safe procurement, storage, maintenance, transportation, and the reason all this is important is, all of this language: procurement, storage, maintenance, transportation, transfers from person to person, and operation of deadly weapons and ammunition. The reason all that's important is because each person or defendant may have done one of those things. So you can't just say the procurement of a weapon. You can't just say the storage of a weapon. You can't just say the storage of ammunition. You've got to do all of this: the maintenance, transportation, transfer, storage, procurement, each time you discuss what they negligently did. Knowingly hired a wholly unqualified armorer. Chose to require the armorer to split time working as a second role as the assistant props master, which again, we've heard over and over again, from Gutierrez Reed, that her time was split and she was paid peanuts. Chose to cut corners and not strictly enforce the industry standard gun safety protocols. Again, I'm not reading every word. You guys can see most of the words on here. Chose not to require that all actors be trained in basic gun safety. And again, this stuff takes time and money. So this is why they didn't do a lot of this. Chose not to require all cast and crew protected against the risk of firearms at all times. Chose not to require multiple inspections of every weapon handed to the operator, including Baldwin. chose not to ensure the armorer was in exclusive possession of all weapons and ammunition at all times, except the extent necessary for shooting scenes. Chose not to ensure all operators of a real revolver, including Baldwin, had adequate training, background, experience. Chose not to investigate the complaints. In addition to these acts, now to me, this complaint is a little bit clunky in that I would like it broken down, probably potentially each one count per defendant. That's just me kind of being OCD, but each count, each defendant, what you're saying they did, what negligence they have, make it a little bit more specific. Because if he settles with one of these defendants, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult, I think. But what do I know? Defendant Baldwin recklessly or willfully, willfully, that's a higher standard, committed the following acts or omissions: chose to accept the weapon that was not inspected, chose to handle a real revolver during a lineup scene instead of a stand-in prop, chose not to conduct or observe visual inspection of the gun, took intentional acts to allow the firing pin, like our expert said, of the revolver to hit a bullet and cause the revolver to be discharged. This is interesting, including pulling or cocking the hammer and releasing the fire pin. So this is really interesting because in his press conference, he said you can't shoot the gun without pulling the trigger. So I assume that's what his expert said. The gun experts at Mad Dog that we talked to said this could happen because the firing pin and pulling back the hammer, which is kind of what he's saying as a backup argument. Maybe you shouldn't have even pulled the hammer because it sounds like if that hits the firing pin, hits the bullet, then boom, the gun goes off. Pointed the gun at Halyna Hutchins and the cast and crew of Rust within a dangerous distance and without any personal protection for them, and recklessly caused a deadly weapon to discharge, which is a criminal offense in the state of New Mexico. Alec Baldwin is not going to be happy with the verbiage in this complaint. Gutierrez, Reed, and Seth Kenny recklessly or willfully procured live ammunition and allowed it to be used. Failed to inspect each and every dummy bullet. Yeah, shaking the box, probably not good enough, as we've discussed. Didn't inspect each one. Chose not to inspect the weapon. Did not accurately report or disclose the scope, nature, and extent of the visual inspection. So my guess is their experts telling them that that is part of the procedure you have to do in gun safety, is not just do the inspection, but report and disclose the extent and nature of the visual inspection. Misled the cast and crew regarding the inspection, purposely saying cold gun, even when it wasn't. Chose not to adequately train and supervise the cast and crew on the Rust production set. Halls intentionally, recklessly or willfully and negligently did the following. They're adding this language in because they want punitive damages, which we'll get to. Declared the revolver safe without disclosing his failure to fully check the weapon. That's a big one. Did not inspect the weapon being transferred. They're assuming he didn't inspect it to make sure it was just dummy bullets, since in fact there were live ammunition in there. Did not accurately report. Did not reasonably investigate complaints. And again, that intentional or willful language is important, as you guys probably know by now, for punitive damages, for damages that punish, for the big numbers. All right, each of the defendants' actual omission with approximate cause. All right, we'll come back to loss of consortium in a minute. Prayer for relief. Let's see if they ask for punitive damages. Compensatory damages, fear, pain, suffering for Halyna Hutchins after being shot. Oh, this is an interesting little nugget. So when someone's killed, in the chat, do you think they can collect, or their estate can collect, for pain and suffering? Yes or no? Let me know in the chat. Loss of value of life and enjoyment of her life, household services, earning capacity. She was probably going to make a lot of money. They can collect that. Funeral and burial expenses, aggravating circumstances surrounding the wrongful death, the loss of love, companionship, comfort, care, and assistance, protection, affection, society, guidance, training, assistance, and moral support of Ms. Hutchins. That's basically loss of consortium. That's what that is right there. Punitive damages, an amount to be determined at trial, pre-judgment and post-judgment interest, costs, such other relief as the court may find. Again, they didn't ask for attorney's fees. Doesn't seem like they're statutorily protected here or allowed here. But yes, they did ask for punitive damages. That's what I wanted to see. Okay, let's go to loss of consortium real quick. 42 years old, Matthew Hutchins, and the loving, close, dependent relationship. The nature of their close relationship give rise to loss consortium claim by Matthew Hutchins, who, but for Halyna Hutchins' untimely death, would have continued to rely on her for guidance, companionship, assistance, and support throughout their lives. She was also the mother of a 9-year-old son, loving relationship, and the loss consortium of his mother, directly and approximately caused by the defendants, suffered loss consortium. But I really like this explanation. The loss of love, companionship, comfort, care, assistance, protection, affection, society, guidance, training, assistance, and moral support, because that is true. And when you lose a mother or a wife, you deserve more money than the world has for losing this. I believe that everything I've got. So that is our brief deep dive, if such a thing exists, of the complaint filed against Alec Baldwin and lots of other people by Halyna Hutchins and her family. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. This was a lot of fun. Hit the like button on the way out if you haven't already. And if you don't subscribe, I don't know why. You're here, you're chatting it up. Make sure you go and subscribe as well so you can and hit the notification bell. We appreciate you all. Until next time, I'm out. Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.